Hey everybody, it's time for another gaming vlog. And for those of you who aren't aware, this is the little series I do that talks about the channel, what's going on with it, games that I'm playing, and plans for the future. Now, for those of you who come here primarily for gameplay and commentary, there's tons of other new stuff to watch, and I'll touch on that a little bit in a minute, but by all means, feel free to go ahead and check out some of the other stuff on the channel if this isn't your thing. But if it is your thing, welcome! First thing I wanted to talk about in this episode is the fact that there has been a lot of new content on the channel over the past few weeks since the last gaming vlog, actually. And in that vlog, I talked about the fact that I've been spending a lot of time, an increasing amount of time, working on my own game. My new game project is the Nemesis Effect. I will link to it in the description for those of you who haven't seen it already. But don't get too excited just yet because we still have a ways to go before we're going to have anything really exciting to show on that. But just so you know, that's where a bunch of my time is going at the moment. But I did want to try as much as possible to keep putting out content on the channel for a couple different reasons. Mostly just because I enjoy doing it, but also I think it's good from a promotional standpoint so that when I do get to the point with the game where I am ready to talk about it more and show more of it, the more people that are here watching content on this channel for other reasons, the better, because that'll give me a wider audience for when I'm ready to make those announcements and show that footage and such. The other thing is, I kind of came to a realization about the channel over the past few weeks, and a lot of it had to do with a blog post that I wrote, which required me to do some comparative analysis between streaming live on Twitch and live streaming on YouTube, YouTube gaming specifically. And one of the kind of side effects of doing that research and writing that blog post was that I sort of realized that I may be done with streaming gameplay and commentary as a general rule. And it's not a reflection on Twitch or YouTube gaming or anything like that. It's just sort of this realization that I kind of started streaming because I tended to think of it as an easier way to make content, or as a way to make content in a single shot where I would just record and then take either the entire stream or bits and pieces of that stream as highlights and turn that into content essentially. And I do feel like that technique is valid to a certain extent because I feel like I definitely have created some pretty decent content using that method. But at the same time, looking back on it, having done it for a while, I don't think it ultimately really saved me any time. And the reason for that is when I stream on Twitch mostly, I tend to stream for at least a couple of hours at a time, right? Like 2, 3 hours at a time. And the thing is, yes, it takes a lot of effort to make videos, pre-recorded videos for YouTube, and you might spend an hour or two making a 10 or 15 minute edited, narrated video for YouTube, but that's still ultimately less time than, say, a 2 or 3 hour streaming session on Twitch. And so the more I thought about it, it kind of became a quantity over quality issue for me, where I started to really realize that if I would just spend about the same amount of time working on planned or edited or more constructed videos for YouTube, I might actually end up saving a little time. And while I wouldn't be producing as much content, it might actually increase the quality of the content that I was producing. And this was something that I sort of theorized all along, but it really took the experience of trying a few different things and fiddling around with it to get to a point where I realized, hey, this is actually what's happening here, and this is actually the direction that I feel like I want to go in. And I feel like that's an important point in all of this, is the idea that sometimes you just have to experiment with things, right? Like sometimes you have to try things, you have to test your theories, and you have to make sure that what you think is the case is actually the case. And you have to do something for long enough to establish whether or not the things you're experiencing doing it are anomalies or if they're actually repeatable patterns. And I definitely feel like I'm at that point with streaming now. Now, that's not to say that I'm never going to live stream again on Twitch or YouTube or wherever the hot streaming service at the time happens to be. But it is to say that I think for the foreseeable future, any content creation focus I have is going to be here on the YouTube channel. It just seems to be what makes the most sense and what fits the most with kind of my available free time and kind of what I feel like I've learned based on streaming for a while and analyzing streaming as a content creation method. So the good news for folks who are already subscribed here and who follow me here on a regular basis is that means more content's going to show up here. In fact, there probably will be another video posted here before the end of the week that I have planned. And I would like to ideally put out at least a video or two per week for the foreseeable future, assuming that there's content that's worthy of discussing. You know, my big thing with content creation is I don't want to make a video just to make a video. You know, I don't want to just try to fill time. If there's an interesting game that I think is worth drawing attention to, if there's an interesting update for an existing game that I've already covered, if there's some newsworthy, noteworthy thing to comment on, by all means, I'm going to try to make a video for that if I can, but I'm not going to run around like a chicken with my head cut off trying to put out a video every day if there's not something there that's obvious and doesn't lend itself to my particular style of commentary or my particular style of video making. So the long and short of it is more content here, at least for the foreseeable, and man, that was a great last second goal. I'm just going to point that out there. You may have noticed that I'm using some Rocket League for the footage on this vlog. That doesn't imply anything. I just like to have something in the background for you guys to look at while I'm rambling. So to kind of move on a little bit, let's talk about games that I have been playing. And there's one game in particular that I really want to make sure I give a proper shout out to because I've really been enjoying it, and I think it's a serious contender for me for my own personal game of the year. And it's a game that really snuck up on me and that I wasn't really expecting much of, and that is Helldivers. Now, if you have not seen the initial impressions video that I did earlier this week on that game, I will link to it in the description and you can go check that out for the full kind of nitty-gritty, gory details of what that game is all about. But if that game is not on your radar, if you haven't heard of it or considered it or thought about it in any way, by all means do yourself a favor and do that because I think that game is something pretty special. That's really kind of all I want to say about it, except to kind of reiterate the fact that that is a game that has gone from barely being on my radar to being one of my favorite games of this year so far. And obviously we're rapidly approaching the end of the year, so the window of opportunity for something to unseat that is closing rather quickly. So I guess that leads me to the other point that I wanted to address, which is kind of future plans for the channel. Obviously, I am trying to get more content out, and I think one of the things I'm going to do this year as a result of that is to try to shift my top 10 PC games of the year series over from the blog format that I typically put it into video format for this year. Now, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to not do the blog post because I've actually already started working on that. I've started figuring it out and chipping away at it. And at this point, I've invested enough time in it that it just doesn't make sense not to do the blog post. So what I'm thinking I may end up doing is doing both this year, doing both the blog post with the written analysis of the games and writing it out that way, and a video, kind of a short form video, just featuring each of the games quickly. And I don't know if I'd actually read what's on the blog post verbatim or if I'd write copy specifically for the video, I might try it both ways and see what makes more sense, or maybe do a mixture of the two, depending on how well what I've written for the blog reads out loud, because sometimes you have that issue where content that is great for reading doesn't necessarily work in narrative form. So I'm going to experiment with that a little bit, but that's going to be something that I'm going to plan on getting out maybe the week of Christmas. I think at a certain point I'm just going to have a cutoff date where I say, nothing else that comes out after such and such date is going to get considered for that list. But I want to get it out like right around the end of the year, basically make that the closer for the channel for the end of the year. So look forward to that. Other than that, I'm really not anticipating or looking forward to too many more releases the end of this year or even into the beginning of next year. So it's going to be interesting to figure out what sort of content I'm actually going to put on the channel moving forward. And that's why I want to set the expectation appropriately. I don't want people to think that there's always going to be, 2 or 3 or 4 videos a week going up on the channel, because if I'm not inspired to cover something, I'm definitely not going to force it. I'm only going to put stuff in front of you guys that I think is worthwhile and worthy. So I know some people might get frustrated with that, because I know a lot of people's YouTube viewing habits are based on, reliable video releases and that sort of thing. But, I just feel like it's the right thing to do, to not just, spam content for the sake of spamming it. Having said all that, I think I'm going to bring this rambling mess of a video to a close. Hopefully you folks have enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see more content from me in the future, as always, please do consider subscribing. And I will see you next time.